Hello, welcome to 90.1 WOVV. This is Brian Pompey, your host of This Island Life, the weekly radio program that meets every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Sorry for the late start, folks. We had a technical difficulty earlier in the hour and it bumped the news back about 4 minutes, and so I wanted to let that finish out. But I am here with you live in the studio, sitting on Silver Lake. And we have a great show for you today. We're going to recount some of the information I gave you last week. And today, in this very orally immersive segment, we'll be digging up the buried Civil War cannons on the radio from a mysteriously displaced fort. So that sounds exciting. And if we have time, I want to talk about the affordable housing project underway at the Ocracoke Foundation. So this is kind of part two of a segment I began last week that talks about the Civil War on Hatteras Island. So maybe this week we could call it That Island Life. And the Civil War theme is all to celebrate the 150th year anniversary of the first Union victory of the Civil War that took place in Hatteras. And with the Flags Over Hatteras Festival coming up at the last week of August. And for more information on that festival, you can go to flagsoverhatteras.com. But in case you missed last week's program, I covered a story about a rogue archaeologist named Mel who discovered the once thought lost Fort Clark on Hatteras Island. In the late 90s, Mel found the northwest parapet, or the northwest corner of the fort, and was later credited by archaeologists from East Carolina University who said that what Mel found was the right shape, the right orientation, and the right location to be Fort Clark. And while they still found hundreds of artifacts around the site, nothing was found that was military or explicitly linked to the fort, and therefore more evidence was needed within some circles, some literary circles, maybe some academic circles, before it was publicly admitted or recognized that Mel found the fort. Then, in 2003, Hurricane Isabel revealed the necessary evidence. Two 2-ton cannons laid exposed on the Hatteras Spit following the storm. The North Carolina Forest Service documented this with aerial photography and a helicopter survey that followed the immediate aftermath. Now, the Hatteras Spit, much like most of the village at this time, was divided by new inlets that were created by the storm and was inaccessible. The cannons were eventually reburied and never to be seen again, or so some thought. Mel spent years collecting data, convincing the Park Service, and gathering a team to attempt a dig for the canyons. That dig took place last Thursday, and that's the dig that I was previewing last week on the episode. And so, stay tuned after this quick bump for the rest of the story and the big reveal on whether we found those cannons last Thursday. But for now, let's listen to some music by Megaphon. Megaphon is a North Carolina band out of Concord originally. They played together with Justin Vernon of Bon Iver before he went off into the Wisconsin woods to write for Emma forever ago. And this song is particularly relevant. It's called Impressions of the Past. I ask you to pay maybe closer attention to the lyrics during the last minute of the song and keep today's radio theme in mind here. Stay tuned, and maybe you can hear the revealing of two Civil War cannons that we tried to dig up on Hatteras last week. Alright, thank you. Welcome to the show. This is This Island Life with Brian Pompey. This is Megaphon.
future of life as it was in the past. Why did I think it would last when all the colors keep on shifting? The truth is not found in the hue, it's in my perspective anew. Impressions of the past will be mourned until I find what it is I'm looking for. What it is I'm looking for. What it is I'm looking for. What it is I'm...
Okay, so last Thursday, in the dark early morning, I met two members of the non-profit marine archaeology group named SIDCO, an acronym for the Surface Interval Diving Company outside of Earl O'Neill's house in Ocracoke. I expected to be joining two more rough and tumble rogue-type archaeologists, and this is the way I often like to describe Mel. But the SIDCO volunteers were simply a couple good old boys from mainland Carolina who happened to have the right equipment. Together in their Kia Optima, we headed north on Highway 12 to catch the 5 a.m. ferry to Hatteras. Along the way, they shared their fascination with war history and discovery, which was originally fostered by a disappointment in current maritime war and ship preservation. They were passionate about this sort of work, and that was for sure. Their mecca, or their crown jewel rather, of maritime history preservation was our destination, the graveyard of the Atlantic Museum on Hatteras Island. We gathered in the kitchen museum around 6 a.m. with the museum curator, his wife, and another curious observer and his young daughter. I drank a much-needed cup of coffee because working late nights at the pub has not prepared me for 4 a.m. wake-up calls, especially with the excitement of uncovering these 150-year-old cannons keeping me tossing and turning at night. And so Mel arrives at 6:15 with another team member, a knowledgeable historian, an experienced excavator. Now, the site is located about a mile south of the museum between the sand dunes of the beach and Pool Road. At the site, there are about 3 Park Service rangers, a backhoe, and everyone's ready to dig. The entire operation is overseen by the Park Service, but Mel, with his digging knowledge and available data, guided the actual excavation. So we approached the site, which we believe the 2 cannons are, where Mel has staked them out.
Thinking, I don't know. You saw the signature on that thing. How it was all darkened out in here. This is where we got the most negative readings out of the whole thing. So this may be a burn pit. The second cannon was laying right in alongside of it. So this stake here, my first guess was between the 2 stakes, and your all's mark, according to my GPS, is right here. Right. So we're all in the same area. Yeah. I didn't know whether he marked the northeast end of his quad or if he went to the center of that target when he said, when the GPS. Right. I never read that. Yeah. We're in the field. That's pretty close to what I was working with. Yeah.
And so with these ground penetrating radar maps that we're looking at as we're talking there in the field, and these radar maps are basically created from sending wavelengths under the ground. If they hit an object, they send them back up, and you kind of map what's underground. And so with these in hand that showed 2 large objects about 12 feet under the surface of the earth, we began discussing different excavating techniques. The first hole is to be dug where Mel's original triangulation of these Civil War cannons overlapped with the high readings from the ground penetrating radar, which seemed to give ample data to think that this is where those cannons were.
How about we start the easy way? Yeah. Even though you're on the other side. You want to try to go for this cannon? That was where... Doug, you want to try to go for this cannon over here on this side? So you can come here and just take that fill that way and work it away from him? Got you, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, that so... Based on what they're saying, between these 2 stakes is where that cannon lies. Where he's got drawn out right there. Yeah, and they showed where the... That's... south was down. That's this zone. That's this right here. Yeah. Okay. What I'm pointing there. That would be. That's between that stake here and that stake there, roughly.
And so This is at about 6:56 a.m. in the morning, and we break ground finally with the backhoe, with Park Service employee using the backhoe. At 7:09 a.m., we are approximately 4 feet deep and breaking into darker soil layers. Mel believes the cannons will be just below or right on the brim of this partly sunken into this darker soil, or what is called the organic layer. This layer contains peat and old decayed grass and other biomass and is of a rich dark color. All the layers above this are represented by what looks like tiger stripes, if you will, and indicate different periods of wind-blown sand. So you can literally see these small, maybe inch to a couple inch thick layers of wind-blown sand. And all of this wind-blown sand would have amassed following the cannons being revealed after Hurricane Isabel in 2003. So since 2003, there's approximately 7 feet of wind-blown or perhaps water-transported sand accumulated here. And I think that's an amazing observation in itself. That in that 8-year period, that much sand could amass in this dune area. But then at 7:19,
Now there's the organic layer we're looking for. That's the organic layer we're looking for. That could be.
and by about 7:25, after digging into this organic layer, we had already struck the water table approximately 6 to 7 feet deep. So those of you may not be familiar with water hydrology, or with hydrology here on the Outer Banks, there's actually a slim lens of fresh water that sits about anywhere between 7 to 12 feet under the surface here, where the less dense water floats on top of some brackish salt water in these really shallow aquifers, and they replenish themselves very regularly. And that's actually how early people here, during periods of drought, they would use this very shallow lens of water here on Ocracoke and also in Hatteras. And so we hit this water table at about 7 feet. Now the ground penetrating radar map predicted a large object about 12 feet from the surface, so we're close, but now we're digging in water. Morale at the campsite was high and optimistic at this point. There was temporary shade shelters that were constructed, media and photographers began meandering around the huge pit. The huge pit at this point was now about 10 feet deep and 40 feet long, with 15 feet wide. It was in the shape of a huge letter L. And representing groups there included the Free Island Press, the Coastland Times, the North Carolina Bureau of Tourism, members of the North Carolina Maritime Museums from Beaufort, and a slew of freelance photographers. And so, for the next couple of hours here, we were digging, and they would stop for a while, and people would use metal detectors to trace the scene to look for artifacts. And during this period, as the hole would be widened as a safety precaution to dissuade cave-ins. And then during this time, we would come in with the metal detectors. All sorts are used to scan the pit and attempt to locate the object's shape and their position. So during each break, team members, myself included, would enter the pit with these detectors in about waist-high water, trying to pinpoint the best places to continue digging to find these cannons.
If there's a cannon down there even 3 or 4 feet, that thing should be singing out, shouldn't it? Just slow your sweep down for me, okay? So you can really pinpoint it. All right, right there. Okay, now back up, back up.
I'm more worried about gurgle.
That's all right. See, now that's closer to what we had marked out. Right in there.
Right there.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Pick up like the end of it or whatever, and it goes down a bit.
That's what I did.
Danny, put something there in line with what he's trying to do.
Watch it.
Oh, coming down, watch it, guys.
Now,
That dirt ain't makes it easier to get out.
all right. Now, can you work your way this way and see if it continues in a link?
what he's here.
A piece of a road.
All right, back up.
Yeah.
I wish that thing had a depth on it.
Yeah.
All that. Yeah.
Well, we know it's not 2 feet.
That's a valuable metal.
See, Rob, what we got to do, we have to make sure you're not after a small, isolated target there.
Yep.
If you have a target there and it is a cannon, you should be able to trace it out with that thing, okay?
Here's what I got. It seems to be linear this way, and like it seems to be lessening off here, which might be iron oxide.
Alright, well, hey, listeners. It sounds like we may have found something. It sounds promising. Will this silent fortress finally make a noise? Is the question I want to answer here on This Island Life. So with that question in mind, let's take a break. Let's listen to a song by Pinback. The name of the song is Silent Fortress. So as the backhoe continued digging through the muddy water, I turned my attention to the new piles of sand that were excavated from the pit. I grabbed one of these more complicated looking metal detectors, and someone said to me, "Hey, do you know how to use that?" I looked at the complicated detector and replied, "No." He looked back up at me with a sort of understanding in his face that he wanted my curiosities and explorative tendencies to be satisfied. So he said, "Yeah, you know what? You'll figure it out." And so that's kind of was the theme of the day. It was very volunteer based. And so off to the sand pile I go. I slowly scan the now massive pile of sand, hoping to find some sort of artifact, or possibly a small cannonball that I could proudly hoist over my head and call for the attention of all the other diggers and thrill seekers. Now, just as I was about to give up using this metal detector, about 30 to 40 minutes into scanning these huge piles and not finding anything, and at this point I wasn't even sure if I was using the thing correctly because it wasn't making any noise. And so I dig away, finally I hear a beep of the detector, a slight noise. And I dig only a few inches into the sand with my hands, only to find a small 3-inch rusted L bracket with an old nail punched through it. It was rusty, kind of copperish looking, old construction piece. And so I slowly walked back to the campsite, not too excited about my somewhat garbage-esque find. It makes its way through a few hands before the curator of the graveyard of the Atlantic Museum exclaims that this is in fact a Civil War area period piece. The copper nail, the L bracket, along with the square spike or the square shaft portion of the nail, dated back to Civil War area construction. So this is kind of exciting. And now I wasn't allowed to keep this, junky little artifact. And this is similar to the artifacts they found years ago when Mel first found Fort Clark. They found about 6 boxes of things like this that led them to believe this was the site. Now, I wasn't allowed to keep the artifact, but was satisfied with the idea that if it was ever shown in a museum or in a collection with the cannons, it would say something to the effect of "discovered by Brian Pompey." So I thought that was pretty exciting. And then also I'm looking at Tuesday's The Coastland Times, which is a newspaper out of Nanteo, printed every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday in the interests of the Walter Raleigh Coastlands Outer Banks area. And I was surprised to see that they had a couple reporters out there, and I'm surprised to see a picture of my hand on the front page, and it says, "Special find." Brian Pompey's search for metal at a Civil War dig site brought a find of a nail through a bracket. The nail has a square shaft, typical of the Civil War era. There's actually a couple more pictures in the newspaper here. I appear one on the inside cover as well as one on the front page too. And it does give a shout out to the radio station. It says, Pompey, a doctoral student at Arizona State, used a metal detector to find a Civil War era nail through a copper bracket. How exciting. That's me saying that. Pompey has a radio show, This Island Life, which airs Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. via WOVV 90.1. And so there's my first plug of this radio show or any type of advertising I've ever done in the Coastland Times. So you can probably still find that periodical around the island if you'd like to read the not so well written article. Anyways, so another artifact of possible relation to the canyons was found shortly after this. A plank of wood was discovered with little fanfare. Again, after some examination by the museum folk, they decided it was part of an original bulkhead. So they would have built a bulkhead, like perhaps a square thing of skinny pieces of wood down to the sand to use as a trash pit, which would be used to bury this leftover weaponry. And remember, that's what we think this area is a pit that the Union forces buried all their leftover weapons, or the Confederate weapons, in this pit. So maybe we could find 2 outdated cannons here. So later that afternoon, though, a second plank was found that connected very nicely with this previous plank, and it was put in the hands of the museum curator again.
This is what I'm looking at right here. See, this was not cut with a skill saw. You see that edge? That was done with a hatchet.
That's an old piece of wood. That's a period piece of wood right there.
That's a tree. I don't know.
but you know, if you look at the circular cuts on this, that's an old-time saw.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think it was done out of a, when it had a pit, man below, man above with a two-man saw. That's how they would saw the planks. The end of it, the bevel cup, does not come with a power saw. It's got like this. Just like the old. Good bevel? Yeah, so it's got a 45.
Does it have?
It's not a true 45. It was done by
Yeah, oh, that's almost a pit saw. Yeah. That's it. Oh, look at the bevel on that, man.
Joe, smell it. It smells like penetrate to me.
Oh yeah.
See that? Now, how far back does penetrate go?
And so this plank, if you could hear them speaking, depicted several indicators that it was, in fact, a period piece. And so it was the cut of the wood on the end, the angle was at a certain degree that it would have been used for a bulkhead. So the end of it had a 45 degree about that would have been dug into the sand to use as a bulkhead, these long skinny planks. Okay, and they could actually tell by the way that was cut that it was done by a hatchet, not by a more sophisticated saw. Also, if they looked at the circular patterns on the side of the plank to see that it was cut with one of these pit saws. And so that's what they were excited about there. They think they were getting close. Maybe this is the bulkhead we're looking for. We can start to find a treasure trove of artifacts and maybe even the cannon carriage. And so at about 12:35 p.m. in the afternoon, the pit begins approaching about 16 feet deep, and it's filled with about 6 feet of water. Now the cannons were supposed to be about 12 feet deep according to the radar maps we had. So at this point, a nervous disappointment was visible in glares and shrugs amongst everyone present. Perhaps feeling this level of impatience, Mel jumped into the pit of about 6 feet of water and began retesting some of the original metal detecting traces. At about this same moment, a member of the Enforcement Division of the Park Service and also a member of the Park Service Safety Coordinator's team crested the dunes of the site. Uncomfortable with Mel's presence in the steep-sided pit, perhaps with everyone else as well, he was up to his chest in water. The Safety Coordinator shared his concerns with shutting down the operation due to the safety issue with the really steep-sided pit constantly kind of landsliding in. So some phone calls were made, and everything was paused for a second. So everything was told just to stop for a second. Let's figure out what we're gonna do here. And then this pause went on for a little longer, and then.
So what's the game plan, Doug?
Well, I think, now they'll go ahead and fill it in tonight, and then we'll try to attempt to get the company down here to go over. If you can put the stake back to original stake,
it back out again.
and then we'll try to get the company back here to go ahead and run the radar again.
I'll come out here tomorrow and get the stakes back in the ground, relay the grid, and put the first guest stake back where it originally was. Okay.
Okay.
It's a shame we have to do all that.
Doug.
Safety-wise, you got to have a minimum slope 3 to 1 for every foot you're down.
Okay.
So that means this pit's got to be 3 times as big as it is right now.
Okay.
Sloped into it,
right.
and the water has to be kept out of the pit.
Okay.
So,
You're talking a major operation?
yeah, this is something we're not just going to jump in and.
Well, that was my concerns initially. The water table, what was going to happen.
We made a good attempt. If it was.
Yes. Doug, you did a good job.
Everybody saying it was that.
Dug the hole out a lot quicker than I thought it could be done. You're the man.
Well, everybody say we have a piece of equipment. Say, yeah, we got one. I said, but nothing more what you all want to dig. Now you see why.
So solemnly, everyone just drove on. The 20 or so people gathered around the pit just slowly walked away on this hot, sunny day. And on the truck ride back to the museum, Mel blamed himself for causing a commotion by jumping into the pit. The water so deep in the sides, so steep. But no one else really agreed with him on this thought. They thought, the pit was just simply too deep for the machinery at hand. The pit needed to be wider, or at least use the construction of some temporary bulkheads. So I was dropped off at the Hatteras Ferry. I walked past hundreds of cars waiting to cross the inlet to Ocracoke. I didn't have a ride at this time, so I was just going to walk onto the ferry. I was dirty, sunburnt, hungry, and sweaty, and I walked through the tight rows of tourist vehicles. Everyone was happy and optimistic about their future vacation endeavors. I scanned the faces of the tourists looking for someone who would be willing to take me with them on the 13-mile ride from the north end of Ocracoke Island to the village. And I quickly realized I was out of place. I was muddy and appeared visibly broken of spirit. I saw a familiar face in a vehicle with a priority sticker and asked for a ride into town. I was home by 3 p.m. without ever seeing a Confederate Civil War cannon. And you know what? Perhaps I never will. But then again, I ran into Mel at the bar 2 nights ago, and he's still dedicated to bringing up these cannons. He has a theory as to why there are only 2 cannons and not 3 as documented in the Confederate records, but shown only 2 objects in our ground-penetrating radar. And a photo he found and he was staring at after the dig, why is there only 2 cannons there? The photos of the Union-controlled Fort Clark in the post-Civil War era. There's a picture of the rifle cannon in front of the lined-up soldiers in the late 1860s in front of the fort. So what Mel thinks is they got rid of the obsolete smooth-bore cannons, but kept the smaller rifle cannon. He has restaked the site, even though it has been bulldozed over completely. He's continuing to build the preservation tank that the cannon will eventually sit in. He's making plans to design a temporary bulkhead that would keep the landslides at bay. He's rescanning the area with ground-penetrating radar again for a second time. So, perhaps the big cannon reveal will take place in a future episode of This Island Life. Although, as of right now, there is no scheduled second dig. But I do hope that we, at This Island Life, do cover that reveal. At least, I'd like to think so. So with that, this is Beirut. The name of the song is The Riptide Want.